You've been living with the feeling for a long time that something is deeply wrong in your relationship. And perhaps that's why the word narcissism appeared in your life. Before that, everything looked like passionate love, complex character. He just loves so much. And only later does he realize that this is a recurring pattern of psychological violence and not a stormy romance. The story I'm talking about today shows this pattern very clearly through the behavior of a person who uses another as a source of emotional fuel. Step by step, you can see how a narcissist behaves, what he feels when he starts his tricks, why he clings so hard to supply, and what happens to him when the victim leaves him while he is still idealizing her, before the open devaluation and cruelty begin. This is a rare but very valuable scenario. The victim gets out of the relationship early, before being emotionally destroyed. To leave that early, one of three things usually happens. Either the woman has already been through a narcissist and now recognizes these patterns almost automatically, so at the first chance she just walks away. Or the narcissist himself senses that there's nothing to take from this partner and quietly folds the story before he invests too much. Or it's a grown woman with real experience, who already knows how such stories end and refuses to waste her life on the emotional games of a person stuck at a teenage level of development. Even though this story is not new, it is entirely about narcissism. A deficient inner world, manipulation, addiction to supply, and the emptiness that he keeps trying to plug with someone else's love. People often ask, how did we live before when nobody talked about narcissists? The uncomfortable truth is that narcissists were always there. We just didn't have the language to name what was happening to us. In your life, there have always been people who devalue you, humiliate you, disappear, come back, push you onto emotional roller coasters and call it love, character, or complicated relationships. This has always existed and isn't going anywhere. What changes is our awareness and terminology. What looked like fiery relationships. Today he loves you. Tomorrow he hates you. Today you fight. Tomorrow you make up. Then come scandals, tears, and reconciliations again, is in reality the same narcissistic script, not a healthy emotional bond. In real, alive, stable relationships, there are no endless mood swings that depend only on his internal weather. There is no situation where every day feels like a minefield. One day he's the perfect partner, the next he turns into a cold wall. One moment he puts you on a pedestal, the next he looks at you like a stranger. That's why I keep recommending that people in relationships or just out of them look closely at such stories. When you understand how this personality type is wired, watching his tricks from the outside becomes almost boring because you can predict each next move. That's exactly what we're doing on this channel. Breaking down narcissistic behavior so thoroughly that it stops being mysterious and stops controlling your life. This particular story is about a victim who leaves the narcissist before the clear, harsh devaluation stage. That raises an important question I've addressed before. Can a narcissist become dependent on his victim? He can, but his dependence has nothing to do with love or appreciation of her as a person. He doesn't see a full, separate human being in front of him. He sees a source of supply. His dependence is on how often and in what quantity you give him attention, emotion, care, sex, admiration. If that supply comes easily, you're quickly replaced. If getting supply is difficult, if you give it in small, controlled doses and maintain your boundaries, the narcissist becomes hooked because you turn into a complicated but very attractive target. In this story, the woman gives him supply in a very limited way, and you can see how it drives him crazy. He rages, seethes, gets frustrated, because he cannot reach his usual level of control and fusion. You see how worthless he feels when she leaves him, when he is cut off from his usual food, when he suddenly can't control what happens next. Anyone who's been in a relationship with a narcissist eventually asks, "What is going on here? Why is he acting like this?" Stories like this make every detail so clear that the magic vanishes, and the behavior turns into a set of very primitive mechanisms. Once you really understand what's behind his behavior, the supposedly special character shrinks down to an angry child who screams and throws things when someone takes his candy away. In this story, he's a young narcissist just starting to build his dramatic, performance-like life. He has a fiancé, wedding plans, a socially acceptable picture from the outside. At the same time, he leads a double life, torments, tests limits, and enjoys walking the line between several women. He loves the idea that one woman is considered his main partner, while another is always available as backup. He doesn't hide behind excuses like, "I didn't know what I was doing." His facial expressions, gestures, movements, and phrasing show that he understands exactly what is happening. He sees her pain, and that pain actually feeds his sense of power. Many people who have been in similar relationships recognize their own narcissist in these details. The same look, same pauses, same way of hurting accidentally. And it's important to remember that this kind of behavior existed long before modern words like narcissism, gaslighting, or codependency became popular. People lived in this dynamic without a name for it, which made it even harder to leave. Now let's get to the main question. What happens to a narcissist if the victim leaves him before he devalues her? Not after he's destroyed her self-esteem, but when she walks away first, while he's still playing the hero. There's no dramatic transformation waiting for him. He burns through a huge amount of energy in rage, hatred, and revenge fantasies about the supply that dared to walk out. In his head, he may replay scenes where he punishes you, humiliates you, wins you back, and then discards you himself. But in reality, things are much more basic. Once the first wave of anger fades, he goes back to his garage backup supply, the person who's always on standby, always waiting, always ready to take him back in any condition. There, he refills his exhausted, empty ego and restores his sense of importance. After that, he goes back on the hunt for new supply. The cycle repeats. Fresh idealization, a new performance, new promises, followed by the same devaluation. No evolution, nothing truly new. Just the same script, replayed with different people and scenery. It's crucial to understand that a narcissist's life inside this script is hollow and absurd. It revolves around an endless chase for validation and proof of his own special status and correctness. There's no real inner growth, no deep mutual intimacy, no mature love. That kind of life is not worth your years, your nerves, or your health. To him, your feelings are disposable resources. This is someone who may even admit he has someone else and calmly say, "There's always a replacement waiting in the wings." He gets pleasure from knowing that someone is sitting there waiting for his return, and he feels powerful when he can say, "Hang on, I'm not done having fun. Maybe I'll come back later." Sometimes it looks even more brutal. He can come to his long-term partner and complain that another woman left him, that he's hurt, that he's suffering. That's the ultimate level of using someone. Your feelings are treated as irrelevant. You sit there listening to how badly he feels because of a third person. and start doubting yourself. Maybe you're not good enough if he can talk so casually about cheating. But in reality, this isn't about your worth at all. It's about his total disregard for you as a person. He uses you as a container for his emotions while continuing to damage you. Many who've been with a narcissist will recognize another very common move: parading other women right in front of you. I've got Masha and someone else. We hung out, had fun, look at these photos, watch these videos. Sometimes these people aren't even real. The stories are made up just to trigger jealousy, competition, and a feeling that you're not enough. I've been through this too, listening to a man talk about his adventures as if it were perfectly normal. At first, it scrambles your brain. You sit there wondering how anyone can say things like that to a partner. Later, it hits you. This is a person so primitive that this is the only way he can feel important. One of the most painful parts is how the disposal phase starts in bed. One of the earliest signs that you're being written off is when he stops having sex with you without any clear reason. It's not about illness, burnout, or a genuine crisis. It's because his internal script says it's time to start punishing you with coldness. At the same time, he might be sleeping with someone else, and he might even let you know that directly or indirectly. Or he hasn't started anything new yet, but he's already using you as an emotional punching bag. You lie next to each other, he's physically aroused, his body clearly reacts to you, and he deliberately turns away and falls asleep. At this stage, the victim almost always looks for excuses. He's tired. He has to get up early. He's stressed. He's overwhelmed at work. That feels easier than admitting that the person next to you is consciously hurting you. But the truth is, he's doing this to devalue you and send a message. You're not important enough for me to want you. The connection between his body and his mind is completely taken over by his internal script. Even if his body responds to the presence of a living, attractive woman, his primitive brain shuts that down because his main goal is to humiliate you and put you in your place. A mentally healthy man acts very differently in that situation. He talks about what he's going through, brings up his struggles, and works with his partner to find solutions. Someone with narcissistic traits uses silence and withdrawal from intimacy as a weapon. This isn't about shyness or fatigue. It's a method of psychological control. It's emotional cruelty wrapped in silence. And it's often at this point that people either start to lose themselves completely or finally snap out of it. Because it becomes painfully clear. This is no longer a relationship. It's a form of torture. I genuinely want people who already know about narcissism to avoid letting their stories get to this point. The moment you notice the early signs of being discarded, openly flaunting other women, dismissing your feelings, unexplained coldness in bed, theatrical behavior, that's the time to stop making excuses and ask yourself why you're still there. You don't have to wait for total emotional collapse, betrayal, and burnout. If you recognize yourself, your partner, or your story in what I've just described, maybe it's time not only to understand what's happening, but also to ask yourself honestly, how much longer are you willing to live inside someone else's toxic script? If this resonates with you, like this video, subscribe so you don't miss future breakdowns, and share your story in the comments if you see your narcissist in this description. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to finally see their situation clearly.